Okay, stream is live. Yeah.
All right. So, starting with wishing everyone a very joyous,
live. Yeah.
joyous, happy, peaceful, miraculous New
Right.
Year.
So, starting with wishing everyone a very joyous.
All right. So, I'll just get back to you here.
A bit of an echo.
It's a bit of an echo. Can you hear me now without the echo?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll just repeat. I'm starting by wishing everyone a joyous, miraculous, peaceful new year because as we are recording this, we are sitting on in the very virgin part of this new year. And I I invited you, Derek, because I think that we are now in an era where we cannot figure out what's going to happen with only our rational mind. The era of stability, of predictability, of being able to forecast with our rational remedies what's going to happen is simply not realistic anymore. It simply seems not viable. So, what can we do then? Then we have to employ all the other resources we have at our disposal. And these resources happen to be what I really work for in this life, this whole yin area, the inner, the invisible, the mystical, the intuitive, all the things that we are not don't belong to the yang area. We have a whole new set of skills, and that's why I invited you because you are an expert in looking at our times and looking at things from a higher perspective, seeing the bigger picture and seeing the bigger wheels of time. And I thought if I could ask you to help us understand the times we're living, where do we come from, where are we heading, and how do we best prepare? So welcome, Derek, and maybe we can start by introducing yourself a little bit because you have such a long bio. With all the books
That's
written
because
and
I've
all
been
the
on
teachings
planet
you've
Earth
given.
for 70 plus years. So, of course, I have a long bio. Okay. But let's jump into the first part of what you're asking because it sounds simple, but it's kind of loaded with all kinds of material. I think the first thing everybody has to understand is that we're all destined to come up against the unknown. But the unknown is an essential part of our transpersonal journey. So our relationship, our attitudes, the way that we look at the unknown is the first factor. Are we frightened by it? Are we excited by it? So this is the first thing, because if we're frightened by it, then we got the basic problem that exists, which is one of fear. And then where there's fear, then we are living in various limitations, whether they're self-imposed or environmental conditions. But fear blocks and limits us from our true authentic potential. All right. So my first point that I want to get across very clearly is that look at each person, look at their attitude towards the unknown. Are you excited by that, or are you in some form of trepidation? Just thinking about, I don't want to lose what I know, and I want some guarantees about what I go into. All right, so there are no guarantees when you go into the unknown. I mean, this is pretty obvious, and that, then I make another quote from the Oxford Dictionary, which defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I mean, that sounds quite obvious, but when in my consultation work, I constantly hear this process that people would like to make the journey and be secure at every stage of the journey. Well, this is not going to happen, because one believes that one is more evolved than that. Is no guarantee that things will remain the same. In fact, to the contrary, you're going to have to let go of a lot of not only self-profiles, but this can mean letting go of many other aspects of one's life, including, various goals, relationship, career goals, and things like that. So this first quality then is to recognize that we're all up against the this tremendous transitional period in our life, which is a challenge for us to upgrade our frequency. Right. So let's take this point, because I think everybody is very aware that it's almost overwhelming, the amount of not only data that we're experiencing, but the amount of intensive experiences that we're going through. And I could point out from an astrological viewpoint that when Pluto was moving through certain signs of the zodiac for 10 years, for 20 years, now it's moving through, a zodiac sign in 10, 11, 12 years. So that's literally the equivalent of 3 days in one. Right? And we all feel this intensity, that there's so much going on not just every day, but every week, every month. We can't always separate, the years from the years, because there's just been so much. And I can't give anybody, the magical wand and say it's going to be different, because it isn't. It can only intensify in 2024. And part of what I would like to get across to the audience today is that 2024 is a preparatory year for the real major watershed period of 25 and 26 in our global history. And I'm not just being dramatic as a typical Leo. No, this is a most powerful year that we go into to finish up unfinished things, 2024, in order to prepare us for 2025. So if we're going to get into this new frequency, a new frequency and an upgrading means that we have to rise above the self-imposed belief systems that limit us. Right? And we all have that in various degrees. But again, I can explain the astrology of this, and I probably will need to, so the audience can, cooperate and co-create with this. But let's just say, generally speaking, we have to look at what we haven't finished. And what we haven't finished, of course, may be something that we haven't finished for quite some time. But finishing up unfinished business is a key factor to understanding the significance of 2024. Okay, so I mean, I can just sit here and talk, obviously. So, Kirsten, so now I've made some introductory remarks. What do you want to point out or expand upon those points?
Yes, first of all, I want to say to the audience that one of your many areas of expertise is astrology, as we can hear. Right. And you've been studying this since you were 17, so that's quite a few years.
Yeah, 50 years, yeah.
Yeah, and you also have an astrology school and so on. So this is really an area of deep expertise. So we will hear throughout this interview some astrological perspectives. And I know that some of my audience, which are leaders in businesses, might think it's very esoteric. On the other hand, I want to point out that wise leaders of all times have also been interested in the cosmic movements, because they do affect us, even though believe it or not, they do affect us. I mean, absolutely. The human mind is absolutely not in control. So if you have thought about before that you're also part of a bigger web, this is your opportunity to take that truth in. Secondly, I want to point out what you started by saying, because we had a little bit of a bad connection in the beginning. You said that we have to look at our relationship with the unknown, and the future is always unknown. Even though the bigger movements, none of us have been in the future. We don't know what's going to happen, but we can prepare as best as possible. And what you said is, be aware of fear. Fear of the future will create a different relationship with the future and that is a big job in itself, because most of us have a lot of fear in our system, and maybe that's one of the things that we need to that's part of the unfinished business, to face how much is fear ruling our lives. This is a good question for the audience. How many decisions do you take based on fear? And how many do you take based on faith? this is a super question to ponder upon in the beginning of a new year.
Absolutely.
Because of why? Why, Derek? Why is that so important to make up your mind about how to?
Well, our potential is, of course, it always has been, to be multi-dimensional beings. And, you know, I got the privilege of, more than 50 odd years working in this multi-dimensional field, which is astrology, because we're looking at, I can go back to the past, I can go to the present, current circumstances, I can go into the future for however many years I want. But I can also go back to, beyond this incarnation to previous past life journeys. So therefore, astrology is very flexible in this sense. But often I'm, meeting the tyranny of being a person being tyrannized by their past. And if we're tyrannized by the past, then we're going to project those thought forms, those wounds into the present, and therefore it will color and condition the future. So we can't get into multidimensionality, which means that we're able to enjoy the diversity of different experiences without emphasizing one more than the other. Now, that sounds very simple, but this is the answer to ending competition between individuals and nations. Because where there's a sense of interrelationship and one is relating the different parts to the whole, then it removes competition. So it's as simple as that. And I'm sure we'll get into this, which is the emphasis upon the feminine principle more and more in the future. But this is the first thing. If we're going to enjoy and really celebrate diversity, then we have to enjoy working with multidimensionality. And that means go beyond the tyranny of the binary way of looking at life, which is this is good, this is bad, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. If everything is based upon yes, no, left, right, light and dark, then you're making judgments. And if you're making those kinds of judgments, intuition flies out the window. Intuition doesn't want to be a part of that judgmental process. And we are moving into intuitional times, which require us to dance between the inner and the outer worlds with greater grace, greater, not just flexibility and adjustment, but I use the word grace in its true sense of the word. There's something quite beautiful about making this dance, making it a conscious dance between the inner worlds and the outer worlds. And that is the goal for us, all of us as individuals, in one lifetime or another, to be more, in this, and the key of multidimensionality. So yes, I mean, we can call it esoteric. I would call it very natural and very normal. I think I'm a very normal person. But when other people, know what they think is my complexity, well, but no, this is not complexity. This is just normality in the intuitional world. You dance between the different kinds of forms. Forms are only there to, be a vehicle for certain ideas. That's why I work with symbols, which are, of course, a form. And so when someone says to me, oh, I thought you were a coach, I thought you were a mentor, you're an astrologer. And I kind of laugh because it's just a form. And I remind people that from the very first word I will use when they come and sit for a consultation, that your horoscope is an energy portrait. So let's look at how you're using energy. And there's no energy which is good or bad, but there's energy that could be badly used. So therefore, my whole focus is, again, working with frequency. And each person, I challenge them to be more conscious of, what is it they're working towards? Are they conscious of this? And are they conscious of the dance between the inner and the outer worlds? Because then they'll get much more happiness out of their life. And in the end, this is the whole point. It doesn't matter what we're working with or what we're learning. The whole point is to be more expressive about who we are on the physical plane. And that means to enjoy life in whatever way we understand that. But the whole spectrum of life is open to us. And that's the joy about being a human being. So then let's be more joyful about that self-expression. So this is so whatever else I may say, this is the main point, that we're here to bring more our life to the physical plane.
Yeah, and that's a good the good reminder in the beginning of a new year to get reminded what is the overall purpose in the corporate life and businesses where I meet a lot of leaders. They are so preoccupied with KPIs, key performance indicators, and typically they are all about the bottom line. And as much as I love the bottom line as well, it's just a very narrow focus. It's a very, very narrow goal. It excludes a lot of other focuses that one might have and that are just as important. And I think it's important to notice that what are we actually, what is actually the point of life? What are we actually, what's at the end of the day, what is the evaluation of our lives? And is that, did we make so and so many bottom lines? Did we conquer so and so much? Or is it how happy were we? How much love did we spread? How much love did we receive? You know, we have to get a little bit alter our ways of looking at what is actually the purpose of our work, of our endeavors. So I think you're right in pointing out what is the real bottom line.
Right. So in the corporate world, as we both know, you know, there's a lot of focus upon hierarchical attitudes, and hierarchical is like looking at a vertical line. But of course, we need to understand that there's an equal armed cross that we now need to look at. The horizontal represents the feminine, and the vertical represents the masculine. So when we're in a hierarchical situation, everybody gets positioned, feels position, or wants a position. All right. Now, you and I both know, you know, many individuals that have pursued this hierarchical energy for years and years and years. And after they've achieved a certain position or role or status, they're still not satisfied. And therefore there's an addiction to keep on achieving and achieving. But if we can't enjoy what we have experienced, then this is what we mean by addiction. The level of and degree of integration and satisfaction with oneself and the world around us is missing. So this is where the horizontal comes in, because the horizontal is the key. There's nothing wrong with hierarchy, but we need to understand that we need both, and there's been an overemphasis upon the vertical line and not much, you know, you're a winner or you're a loser, you know, this kind of attitude. And so the horizontal is the key to everything, because let's say that if you meet a new relationship, right, and the horizontal is about relating, if you meet a new relationship, if it starts, whether it's a personal relationship or professional relationship, if it starts with the keynote of equality, well, then there's going to be mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual openness, and then a mutual cooperation, ability to co-create and cooperate. And then you've got a whole other world that opens out because of this. And you know, it sounds very simple, but look at our personal relationships, and are they based on, you know, mutual equality? If so, then, you know, the mutual respect guarantees that there's a dynamic interaction and a dynamic flow, rather than, you know, one-upmanship or this status or hierarchical position. So in many ways is the key. You know, some of my CEOs are, instead of them, you know, asking me when do they get back into the saddle and you know, get to another position, when they come in the room, I'll ask them to lie on the floor, and then this is very, very provocative, and I know that. But if they lie on the floor and put their arms out, you know, on the floor, this is, firstly, it tells the brain cells that they're getting into connection with the earth energy, which is very feminine. And secondly, they don't have to do anything. They're in a state of being. Right? Now, again, it sounds so simple, but if they're not connected to their body, then they're not connected to their emotions. And this is the key here, you know, to get people to enjoy what they've done, instead of like in a buffet, that you go up and you heap on your plate a mountain of food, and then you've eaten that, then you go back again. I mean, that's not just gluttony, that's just an inability to enjoy what's in front of one. Right? So we have to have this greater degree of respect. And I think Queen McGraven, of course, made that point in her New Year's speech, that respect for each other is the key to a better society, and of course it is. And our Buddhist friends will emphasize the word kindness. Well, yes, because showing respect and kindness is also spreading light. Then we're adjusting to another person's reality, and we're including it. If you can include another person's reality, without feeling thrown off balance or whatever, well, this only occurs because of the feminine quality. The feminine includes, the masculine does not include. It's not the purpose of the masculine. The masculine has, a one-pointedness. So it's meant to open out, possibilities, but it's only the feminine which brings together the fragmented pieces and joins together diverse parts. So hooray for the feminine. And we really have to emphasize, this is not just celebrating women, it's to celebrate the feminine in each one of us. I mean, for example, here's a very nice quote. It's the female side of man and the male side of a woman that generates success. And there we have it in a nutshell. That each one of us is challenged to be, a better balance with the male and female energies, and recognize what's appropriate at any one time. But if we're talking, if individuals out there are talking about their spiritual life, then they need to look at their capacity to include, not what they're doing and what they're saying, but the best teaching is by example. Then be an example of inclusiveness, that your example shows and demonstrates without you pointing it out. That is where you're coming from, that you're including these different worldviews of others, and have the capacity not to feel threatened by differences, but you can agree and you can disagree, but you're including it. That's a very different approach.
Absolutely. And may I just say that I'm so happy you are describing the principles that I am talking about in this book, because sometimes I get a little bit frustrated that I feel that people don't understand. There is a reluctance to even name the feminine. It's like the feminine is always regarded as subordinate, as something, you can use that at home, that's so fine, but not at work. And I cannot say enough how we are ignoring a natural principle by suppressing the feminine, and not thinking it's just as important as the masculine. It is equally important, and it's a qualities in all of us that we need.
Of course, it's equal, but equal. Right. But so this is going to be an interesting kind of phenomena as we go into more and more this period, and we call it the Aquarian age, because all this has to accelerate, and gender issues, we're quite, or you and I maybe are not, but the majority of people are still limited by stereotypes about stereotype male and female roles. But this is fast changing. I mean, just look at the whole theme of pregnancy and birthing. All right. I mean, when my generation, I come from the 50s, 1950s. So, my father legally was not allowed to participate in the birth chamber. So he had to be waiting outside, or he was in the pub. That's drinking and being nervous, and well, how is it going to go? And now, I got 3 kids, and I've been present at their births, and for the man and the woman to be sharing that experience, to be fully equally present, and cooperating with that. I mean, that's a phenomenon. So that's a new icon to work with. And then, as you know, here in Denmark, particularly, we have the benefits of, after birthing, the man can be looking after the baby for a long period. And I go to America, and I can't believe that, American mothers, they're allowed 6 weeks, and then they have to get back to work. And I point this out, this is criminal, because it's going to literally fuck up that child's psyche, that they're being abandoned in that early phase, where they need the minimum first 2 years to get it right. If we get the first 2 years right, and there's that sense of connectedness, a sense of not being pressurized by external events, but you're fully present for that child, this will end the traumas and many of the problems that we have in teenager period and adulthood, because this is where it begins. If we get it right in the very beginning, we will not have these conditions later on. But this is not where society goes. But that's up to us, you see. So if we get it right in the beginning, this is also an attitude of the feminine. And how much focus is placed upon that at this period of time. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the death process, which is also going back to the Great Mother. Right? When we die, what dies? This is the big question. But what dies is actually the personality. The personality composed of our body, our emotional life, and our mental life, or let's say the lower mental aspect. This composes the personality. But beyond the personality is the soul, and the soul uses these vehicles to make connection with the physical plane. So when we die, the different elements that have made it possible for us to be incarnated on the physical plane, they dissolve one by one. And then what's left, and what's only left, is consciousness. All right? Now, that is also a feminine process of dissolving. All right? And, we can go into this in various ways in our talk, but I just want the audience to understand that there's so much self-denial and fear around the whole issue of death, because this is also a return into the feminine. No wonder why the Christian fathers 2,000 years ago, when all feminine goddesses that were identified with death, they were all feminine. They were never masculine. Right. So this is a big kind of problem for the church. So then they made it like a skeleton that was neither male or female. But because if you give to death the biggest factor of talk about reality change, death is the ultimate reality change, and then it's a female. Of course, this was incompatible, but it isn't, because we have to look at the wisdom of the ancient world, and we have to look at Celtic societies were equal gender between male and female, and most Mediterranean-based cultures, as well as the Egyptian and others, Turkish and Greek, and you can see that they had a good balance between male and female, and we have lost it, but we have to regain it. So there's historical perspective about male and female gender that we can learn from, but ultimately, we are in this period in our world history where Aquarius is a sign of transgender or androgyny. So there's going to be more and more confusion about what is sexuality, what is male, what is female, and all the rest of it. And this is inevitable, and it must be so, in order that we remove these old, boring, stereotype images of male and female. We have to become much more sophisticated. And in my opinion, sophistication only occurs because of the feminine, because the feminine is seeing time in a very different way than the masculine, and therefore can include the continuity of consciousness from the past, can be included and used and integrated in the present. See, and unfortunately, I'm not knocking. I'm a man, but I'm not knocking the masculine. But the masculine can't do that, and therefore the only hope for us to have continuity of consciousness and not be freaked out by these endings, because we're going through, as everyone realizes, a shift in frequency that's going to end many institutions and many ways of life that people have settled into for many years. They're not destined to last. So this collapse of society can be a nightmare for many, but for others it's a clear indication that we're moving into new forms, and the feminine is birthing new forms. The masculine can't birth new forms, but that's the feminine principle, to give birth to new forms.
It's so fascinating. What I love about your work is that you have this knowledge of the greater periods of history, because sometimes we get this myopic perspective, and we can only see the next quarter and the next year and the next goal. But we are part of this enormous kind of, we are part of the evolution of humanity, and I think this makes sense to keep this perspective in mind. How can I serve the evolution of humanity? How can my work every day serve a positive evolution of humanity instead of just my next deadline, my next goal? I'd like to get into a little bit more, because you have this bigger perspective. Can you speak about this overall shift? We come from a long time. We come from a long time of, I think it's named the age of Pisces, the Piscean age, right? And that's the last 2,000 years. And then there's other cycles of that are 5,000 years and 26,000 years and so on. But let's speak about, if we just take the difference between the era we come from and the era we go into.
Right.
And how do we know that this is true? Because I'm sure that some of my audience are like, oh my God, here she goes. Now she's into astrology. I mean, how can we trust this woman? So I'd like you to speak about how do we actually know that this is this is true. It's not just fantasy or like these, woo-woo people who think something that we can't be trusted. I think we need to understand now, how can we take this seriously, and what do we need to understand about where we come from and where we.
Okay, fine. This is the normal kind of question about, does it work? Well, you can go back to, many great minds and who have understood that not only does it work, but that a wise person, is cooperative with universal intention. All right. So an astrologer, basically, astro meaning the stars, and logos meaning the word. An astrologer is someone who reads the handwriting of the gods in the sky. So poetically, that's basically what I'm doing. I'm reading the handwriting in the heavens, and translating this in terms of our as above, so below. But the key to recognize now is that it's not just above influencing below. That's our capacity to be receptive, which is actually a feminine quality. The more receptive we are, the more there is a descent of this universal energy into our consciousness, into our world. So there's, for me, the Aquarian age is already with us. For others, it's something in the future, like 1,000 years from now, but it isn't. So to get back to your point, when planets move, they activate the birth potential that's there on the horoscope. So we have an individual chart, and then we have, the collective, the movement of the collective. So we have 11 planets that we work with, basically. 3 of them are what we call the outer planets, transpersonal planets or spiritual planets. Everything is spiritual, so I never use the word spiritual because everything is spiritual. But outer planets means that they're beyond the classical 7 planets up to the planet Saturn. So they're outside of time, they're outside of limitations. They are the ambassadors of the universal principles into our solar system. So these are Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. All right. So a basic principle, Pluto takes 250 years to go one time around the zodiac. Neptune takes about 15 years in each sign. So it's about 150 odd years around the sign. And then Uranus takes 84 years to go one time around the sign. So they have a different time frame, right? So a clear example, when Pluto, slow moving Pluto, moved into the sign of Cancer in 1914, that's the start of the First World War. When Pluto moved into the next sign, Leo, 1939, start of the Second World War. When Pluto moved into Virgo, the sign of labor and health issues, this is where there's a big chaos and transformation in these areas. When it goes into Libra, we have the war of the sexes. When it goes into the next sign, Scorpio, we have the AIDS crises. And when it goes into Sagittarius, we have religion, and we have the potential or possibility of a Muslim-Christian war, and we have the burning of the stave churches in Norway, and all kinds of issues around religion and things like this. When it went into Capricorn in 2007 and 8, Capricorn is an earth sign, and it's still there now as we speak. And then we have what's called the international economical meltdown. Now, this is all within our memory banks, but we got notorious bad memories. So when Pluto went into Capricorn, all issues about control systems, which is the monetary system, as well as monarchic systems and church systems, these are control systems, right? So therefore, Pluto, the archetype in the psyche of transformation, but transformation includes death followed by rebirth. Now one can then consider how much rebirth or how much has been learnt from what's taken place in 2007, 2008, but everyone recalls how they lost their monetary values and etc. And so what then, when Pluto, in this month, as we speak, in January, the 21st of January 2024, it moves into the sign of Aquarius, and it's going to be there for 20 years. Right? I mean, I can like bring out the trumpets and I can wave the flags and really be excited, as many, of course, astrologers are, because if Pluto represents power, and as it does, and transformation, and if Aquarius represents a whole new world order, you're already getting indications of this. But from what I've just showed you very, very briefly, each time Pluto goes into a new sign, that sign and its qualities gets reorganized, and it brings forth the shadow side. It brings forth our awareness of what we don't want to work with, because Pluto is the underworld god, and brings it up to the surface. So then by integrating what we deny or what we don't want to work with, then there's a whole other kind of power and release of our authentic potential. So Pluto, very, very powerful. And I could have just a talk for the next half an hour just on what Pluto in Aquarius means, but this is primarily in response to what you asked me, that anybody would look at that and see there's clear indications of this movement affecting global collective events. All right, so think about whenever a transpersonal planet, transpersonal, going beyond the personal, and therefore a catalyst for change for our personal life, because it breaks up our limited finite ego identity and introduces a new rhythm, a new pattern, new frequency into the life. Think of all three planets that are transpersonal are going to change signs in 2025. Pluto is already in Aquarius in 2024, but we're going to have Uranus moving out of Taurus and moving into Aquarius, moving into Gemini, an air sign. and we're going to have Neptune. I have to speak more about both of this, but Neptune then will leave its own sign of Pisces and goes into Aries. This is phenomenal. So when we have 3 transpersonal planets all within 6 months changing signs, we haven't had that in history. I can't recall any time in previous history where all 3 outer planets have changed sign in a short period of time. So the effect is global and the effect is enormous. And the transition here therefore demands us to get clearer in 2024 about what this can mean. Because, for example, in the work that you do, you have to understand that Neptune is our connection with the invisible worlds. It's really based upon our spiritual evolution, but it's also based upon typical Neptune, what is truth, what is real, and what is not real. And we're all of us, particularly with the enormous push towards, Aquarius and about ideas and communication with different dimensions. AI is going to be a phenomenal advance, and it's going to, change enormous amount of our society within the next 2, 3, 4 years, as we can all recognize. But this is another kind of conversation. But I want you to be aware that when Neptune leaves its own sign of Pisces and goes into Aries, if Aries is understood as the first sign of the zodiac, and Aries is a fire sign, and Aries deals a lot with leadership, Aries rules the head as Neptune and Pisces rules the feet. So there is a whole other emphasis upon new forms of leadership. And when I say that, I really mean, people like you and the group around you need to be fully alert to the fact that 2025 has enormous kickstart for not just inspirational leadership, but to recognize that the society as such is much, much better prepared to accept these new forms of leadership. Right? Now, that opportunity is so significant because, this is where, as you're teaching and others, myself included, are teaching this, that, what is a new form of leadership? Well, if Neptune represents our ability to connect with the invisible worlds, and then intuitional leadership is very appropriate, right? And everyone can participate in this upgrading, but not everyone can function in that way, but everyone can participate in it. So this is one of the many challenges about 2025, because it will confront us with the next steps ahead and our ability to envisage the steps that we want and invest more energy in making that happen, right? Because Neptune deals with our imaginative faculties, the right hemisphere, the right brain hemisphere that enables us to image make. Well, think about how much time we invest in certain images that we persistently think of and are creating in our auric field. Well, we can also invest like water to a good plant, where we want to go, not only where we are, but where we want to go. So there's a lot more image making faculty, and that opens out a whole other understanding about the architecture of how we use the head and the heart working together to create the new pathways that we want. Now, the head and the heart working together, as you know, to simplify it, the head is very much the logos, the principle, the masculine principle, and the heart is very much the eros and the feminine principle. But we need both of them working together. So this is what this Neptune in Aries represents, the capacity for a whole new generation of head and heart integrative men, people that are capable of manifesting at will their imagination and will coming together and quickly manifesting. So the powers and the gifts of imagination and manifestation are going to be where we need to train. ourselves, because to capitalize on this enormous push to get us to come to what technically will be described as fifth dimensional levels, where we can see the beauty of how everything is interrelated and we do not feel separated from things.
It's a great, there's a great infinite possibilities, and I think it brings so much hope that we have that capacity, because if we only use the old ways, the future does not look too bright. Do we agree about that?
Well, exactly. I mean, the whole idea now is to experiment and risk take and move into uncharted waters. And, for example, I'll give you, another, because obviously we could speak for quite some time on these subjects. They're pregnant. There's so much that can be shared here. But Aquarius is a sign. When we draw it, you'll see the two wavy lines. So it's like reflecting, as above, so below, affecting each other. So this is called the age of air. And what that means is that intercommunication between species is going to be a very, very pronounced part of this journey. Now, I know some of your audience may not want me to unfold this too much, but I have to point out that if you look at the last year, and this 2004 will accelerate this preparation, you'll see that many governments have released information about their connections with UFOs, right? What they haven't done yet, but which they will do in this year, will release more information about their cooperation with our space brothers and sisters. So the key to understand is that Aquarius is like, it rules the bloodstream in the human body, and the blood is the life. And if Aquarius rules circulation, then the blood is to circulate between all parts of the body, and therefore connectedness and sharing is the key to overcome all health problems and all health crises. Because a health crisis, as we know from the COVID pandemic that affected us for 2 years globally, is a disruption of the universal flow with us as an individual. And we're out of balance. We're not connected to the universal flow. So we have to get back into the universal flow. So what I'm also pointing out by saying this is that it is inevitable that when there is, direct, there always has been, but it's been more secretive. When there's more direct communication with ETs and space intelligences, some who are much more advanced than us spiritually, and some who are at the same stage, this is nothing less than a revolution to our consciousness. It will totally, utterly change our way of looking at each other and our way of entering into the age of Aquarius as humanity and not as tribes. Right? And none of us know what that accelerated push will mean. But once you've understood that we are not alone and we're part of a galactic federation, and that you and I as individuals are based upon genetic material that comes from different parts of the galaxy, and that those genetic materials, I mean, without going into this in more detail, but that's what connects us with different parts of the galaxy, and why these other intelligences, they're part of that process. So for some people, God could be, the God of this planet, right? And I could agree with that. But then there's a God of the solar system, and I could agree with that. And then beyond our solar system, there's another kind of God, which is beyond our solar system. So there's different ways of understanding this expansion of consciousness that we all have to participate in. But we will recognize that this theme of networking and communication between the higher and the so-called lower will intensify, and this traffic will include these physical space tourists that have been here for billions of years. And simultaneously, you'll get the revolution in history, which has already taken place. There's such a recognition of pre-Diluvian cultures. There's more and more information and more evidence being clearly manifested, Antarctica melting and pyramids being revealed. And that's just one of 1,000 examples that I could present. But when history shows that we've totally got it wrong, we have to rewrite history, that's also another mindset. I mean, I've taken groups for 30 odd years to Egypt on pilgrimage, and I show them some of the high tech and the drilling of holes into granite, which are obviously drill marks. And I point out how could that happen with copper tools, and so on and so on. And you just have to look at the buildings and the angles and the enormous beauty, and then you recognize that our version of how things have been made and built, and we should stand in awe of what has been achieved, and not be so arrogant to think that we are so advanced. We may be technologically on some levels advanced, but spiritually we're a long way to go. But that's our goal, to recognize where we need to go and work consciously towards that. So history is going to be a big area of revolution. And when we rewrite the history books and we rewrite the fact that we are part of a global community that includes Venusians and Pleiadians and Syrians and Arcturians and so on and so on, there are several races of space people that are participating on our planet. Well, I know that is mainly, for most people esoteric, but it isn't, because the fact that you have not been exposed to that information does not mean that it's normal. Again, I repeat, it's normal for someone like me, and I think that more and more people will be exposed to this reality, and for some it's going to be a mindset change which is nothing less than revolutionary. But this is where it goes. So you cannot expect the Aquarian age to go in an expected path. It's nothing expected. Always expect the unexpected. This is very, very good psychology. Always expect the unexpected.
Well, if I should bring it a little bit more down to earth, I see myself sort of as a bridge builder between the old world and the new world. And what I can definitely see happening is that a lot more people are getting much more spiritually interested. I mean, really on a quest to understand more of what is meaningful in life, understand themselves more, get a more whole picture. I see that people are, it's not enough for them. We see that with the Great Resignation and quiet quitting and so on, that it's the regular, what used to give us satisfaction in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's not enough anymore. So we see this quest towards understanding more, and also I think as leaders, we absolutely need to open our minds to include consciousness as part of our leadership toolkit, because otherwise we will be so limited, especially now that AI can do all the analytical stuff and the rational stuff. I mean, what's left for us to do? We have to employ other parts of ourselves to be able to be useful. So I think that on a down to earth level, it's just logical that these times are so complex and so they just require something completely different of all of us. And I'd like you to go a little bit more into, we talked at one time and I said, it seems to me that there's an opportunity for a lot more control because technology is getting much better at surveying and we might go into an era with digital passes where we all have CO2 quotas and so on. So, and you said, well, it's actually an era with power from the people. So I think that would be interesting to touch upon as well. That leadership now is not only from the top down, it's certainly also from the bottom up, which I believe is the feminine It's like the power to lift, power to protect Mother Earth, and to work for the life-giving and life-affirming principle. So can you touch a little bit upon that as well?
Yeah, I mean, a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, many years ago, is very, very relevant to what you've just said. So here's the quote: "We need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity." Right? It's so simple what those words say, but it's the key to everything. So where do we put our focus? And I think on this point, we're talking about, of course, consciousness. Everything's about consciousness, raising the level of self-awareness. But to do that, you have to look at the material that you have created during your life so far. Now, this is what we would call in astrology a Saturn experience. There's no coming to self-awareness and concept without some kind of pain. But you have to look at what you have created. So most people do not look at what they've been doing, for example, in relationship, in career, or a health issue, because you go to any doctor and they never look at causes, they only look at and deal with symptoms and effects. They never look at causes. But if you are going to work with consciousness, you have to look at what you've been doing and take responsibility for that. So there's no coming to consciousness without looking at the past and extracting meaning from the past. So part of my work as a consultant is to not only focus upon what's happening now and the possibilities of the next 2-3 years, but look at when these planets were active in the previous time period, how did you deal with it, right? And memory is also an act of consciousness. So we tend to forget that if we're not bringing awareness from our past into our awareness now, then is it only focus upon the future? No, we have to look at this. So my method would be make a friend of time, right? Because how you use time is a clear indication of consciousness. Right? What does a person use their time on? Right? So there's no one formula, of course not, for what this is. but a good exercise would be to make a list of all the things that one has to do. You've got family, you've got kids, you have to shop, you have to do this and do that. Those are and then the time that's available during each day and then the week. What do you use that time for? So look at what we have chosen to put our time on, because that's a priority, right? And in the end, all of us are asked and challenged to look at our priorities, what's important to us, right? And this then brings us into real deep levels, because whatever we tend to use our time on is important to us. But it's also a mixture, because we can be attached to certain things, and our attachments will show our fears, and we're involved in certain things. And again, we need to look at a better use of time. Right? There's our personal world, and there's the world. We're a family unit, and then there's the world, the community around us, and then there's the bigger world. So we'll probably need to not just structure this in a black and white way, but to be more willing to create this circulation that we talked about a few minutes ago. The Aquarius principle is circulation, right? And when there is circulation, then the life force, the blood, moves over the whole kingdom, right? So we have our personal world, and our personal world is inevitably more and more linked with the collective. Most people would prefer not to feel that their life is affected by the collective, but it is. So when more and more people understand that we're moving towards an Aquarian society, which is a group conscious society. So instead of the old method, the old Piscean method is, you get a charismatic leader who then is a fantastic teacher, and when they die, the organization that they've set up disappears, because it was built upon one person and devotion to the presentation and the ego of one person. Right? The big shift with Aquarius is that it's the group that is the leader, the light bearer. Now that's very, very different. Right? We've never had that before. We expect the knight on the white horse or the individual to come and save us. I don't want Jesus Christ coming to save me. And Jesus Christ doesn't want me to be saved. He wants. There's a group of lighted beings, and the reason why they are masters is that they've mastered the three worlds of human evolution. They got started earlier and were more accelerated in their growth than you and I. But we're all moving in that area. We're all meant to master life. And then when we master life, that means that we then can be a good instrument for light rather than, wanting it to be revealed. We don't, in the end, the movement here is that we don't want borrowed light. We want to be the light ourselves. That's an enormous shift. So when more people are functioning like that, then you know that a good group in any company or any situation in life has a telepathic awareness of what needs to be done without it being pointed out. This needs to be done, so we do it. Right? Exactly. So it's not a jockeying for position and things like that. There's an awareness that the group benefits by this contribution. So this form of group consciousness will be more and more the theme. And you're seeing it already, with groups more and more in both extremes, both light and dark, that recognize that as a group, they can affect politics, they can affect economics, they can affect various things. And we're seeing it in various ways, and particularly with the ecological movement and the climate change movement, that it's groups of people that are enabling there to be, a enormous shift in attitudes about how we participate with the worlds and kingdoms around us. And we have to remember that I'm not religious. I would say I'm the word is spiritual, but if hold on, I wonder why I said that to you. But let's put it like this: that the key to work with in the coming period is that groups of individuals. There'll be extremes on both sides. Extreme viewpoint, because everything in Aquarius is based upon authenticity. So everyone is to be respected for their authentic viewpoints and where they're coming from. But there are different layers and levels of truth. Right? And in the end, these just different forms. There's the form of light that expressed in Buddhism, the form of light with Christianity, the form of light Islam, it's still light. And the higher up the mountain that we go, the more that everything becomes more and more one. And our role as individuals and working as groups of individuals is to recognize, to see and be sensitive to that oneness more and more. Right? And of course, this is the goal of humanity. It's called, in technical terms, an awakening, but in technical terms, it's called an ascension. An ascension means raising the frequency. When you raise the frequency, you enter into a fifth dimensional way of being, which means that the density of our physical world and the density of our way of thinking is so dense. I can only use that word dense because because it keeps us anchored on the physical plane. The physical plane is to be enjoyed, but it's not the only reality. Right? So we are to be able to move into these other dimensions at will. And this is, of course, going to be the significance. And I'll point this out on one level. It's quite easy for me to predict that in the age of Aquarius, an air sign, we're really going to understand what the word levitation means. And it'll start off by, a recognition of when you have, like Back to the Future, if you see these skateboards that can levitate, then you get cars that can levitate in the air. Well, this will be a normal development in the few years from now. Right? So, but this is all again working with the air sign. But air is our capacity to enjoy interconnectedness with, talking to, as all Aquarians can do, their friend to all. So that they can talk to anyone from whatever their age, whatever their background, whatever their life experience. Aquarians can connect with all types of individuals and enjoy that. Well, we have to include all types of intelligences and some which are non-human. And that's the glory of Aquarius, and yes, so we'll see a lot of new information that's being made available, a lot of new technology being made available, and there's nothing. This is revolutionary because this pushes us into an interaction with each other, and I hope if the heart and the mind are working together in the right way, this is a phenomenal experience. Then literally this is why I want to be incarnated in this time period, to experience and to see this reality made manifest on the physical plane.
Yeah, it is. It is a time of extraordinary opportunity, and I think this is what you are presenting is so important, because if we look at our present and the future with regular eyes, with our regular glances from the old era,
right,
then we can get a little bit disencouraged, because we have so many problems: climate, ecocide, and there war, right. AI, democracies are falling. I mean, we have such polarity between the dark and the light. It's like it looks like it's irreconcilable. But if we change the lens, if we get a new set of glasses to look at the world with, we will see a different reality, and it will be easier for us to co-create that reality. And I think a good place to start is with the heart. What is the heart? Pay more attention to the heart. Heal the heart, heal the broken heart, listen to the messages from the broken heart, and start using the heart more in interactions. And I know this, if I was be saying this in the 80s, everybody would be laughing at me. They have been, so I'm used to that. But I think I have a point now. I think that we have to, as you say, use our whole selves. Not only, we have so many centers of power that we have to light all the lights.
And that's what air does. It connects these fragmented pieces and relates them to each other. And this is, of course, the whole theme of when we use the word relationship. I need to emphasize the fact that in my worldview as an astrologer, the ability to design a life and to bring let's call it the fragmented parts of our life together. Look at a designer and look at how color, shape, form, size, weight, texture, all that comes together. But that is the principle of what we would call astrological Venus principle, which is relationship, the capacity to enjoy this inclusiveness, this power to relate these different qualities to each other, and then create something that shows that wholeness. And let me just see if I can. I'm looking at my papers. I've got so many papers around here because I wanted. There's some certain quotes I wanted to make, but there's a Plato quote, and I can't find it straight away. But there's a Plato quote that the purpose of education is to help us to enjoy beauty. Now, for me, beauty brings together all things, and then you have the power relationship. So yes, relationship in terms of us as human beings, that's one thing, but our relationship to the world around us through what we create. So this is why 2025 and the years onward have been predicted as a revolution in music, and particularly that means sound healing as one factor. But there's a renaissance in culture and in art, because art is again, the forms that we choose to create. Now that's going to be an explosion. I mean, and just like in the 60s, we saw many new art forms and a new cultural renaissance taking place. Well, it's the same principle that's going to be made manifest. And my kids, you know, they're some of them, two of them have left, but when they were at school, they used to say to me, Dad, can you tell me why am I at school? And then as a good father, I would say the normal comment is to prepare you to be a 21st century citizen. And then they would reply, yes, but if it doesn't do that, then can you tell me again, why am I at school? And I share that because this is a dilemma for many, many young people that they can see that, you know, yes, political systems, economical systems, you know, that need to be much more democratic. There needs to be a sharing. The rich and the poor, the chasm is widening. But the school system is also up for total change. All right. And then one of my sons showed me photographs of different areas of life, photographs from 20 years ago and now, and it was changing and this and that and the other. And then they showed me photographs 200 years ago of photographs of education, schools in a classroom, and then the school system now 200 years on, and it's still exactly the same. So he was quite right in presenting those photographs because, you know, not much has changed, and it needs to totally be changed. Right? So therefore, you know, the young are aware of this, and that's why they're disenchanted. But it's up to us, you know, like everything. We're parents, but we're also examples of how it can be. And if you and I as parents and as adults do not provide an example for the youth of today, well, you can see what's going to take place and what is taking place, you know. And unfortunately, as some examples, I have clients, of course, all over Scandinavia, but I have an increase of young people attempting suicide, and some of them succeeding. Because of the fact that they see not much desire to participate in the world that we have created. And then there are, of course, the opposite end of the spectrum, individuals that are willing to make the changes and are aware of what needs to be changed. So there's a mixture. But again, you and I are examples, and that's what it must be, that if anything, we need one thing that we need more and more in 2024 and 2025 is courage. We need the courage and we need the confidence to move into the future. We are not resuscitating or projecting the past into the future. We need new forms, and we need the consciousness that goes with the new forms, and that's our work. So, you know, what may be, you know, what I call seeds at the moment, seeds planted, and when the soil is more fertile, then our work is being recognized because of the way that it's responded to. But, you know, pioneering work is always don't expect too much recognition.
Talk to me about that. And you probably know yourself as well that you've been saying these things for many years, and for 20 years, what you're saying has been totally clear to me.
Right.
I've always known it, like I just know it. I just know it to be true. But right. I'm looking for evidence and writing books about all the evidence. But I really I just know that we are in a big transition. And actually, as far as I have understood, the Aquarian age is 2,000 years. So it's like, it's not like 5 minutes here and there.
No,
like,
exactly. Right. So it's a long period of time, and this first period, the first 20, we're in the first degree of Aquarius, which every degree lasts 72 years. So we're in it, and this is pretty obvious. When you see things such as the wars in Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Hamas, and that, when you can see that this worldview it's like being in a dinosaur world. We can see, and like, yeah, without going into all that, but this is the last gasps of the old Piscean attitude. and we need that because contrast enables us to see things more clearly. So the theme of 2024 with Neptune in the last degree of Pisces and Saturn going in Pisces also and going out into Aries in 2025, Pisces is a sign of finishing up, right? So we have to finish up a lot of old unfinished business, but it's also to recognize what is real and what is unreal. There's not just any fake news that we have to, AI now can produce your face and my face and make videos of us, and we never even said those things, but it is already doing that, right? So we're going to have to be very alert to, the good and the not so good applications of it. So discrimination between what is real and what is not real, what is truth and what is false. Every human being is challenged in this period to establish that for themselves. Discrimination has always been a major part of a spiritual life, right? And this is particularly so in this period. And yeah, I mean, all of us, whatever that may mean, but this is our challenge: where to put the focus, what is more real, and what is less real.
And this includes the inner. What are you believing in? What are you choosing to believe? What are you choosing to trust? Are you trusting that little voice in your head saying you're not good enough and blah, blah, blah? Or are you trusting the confident voice to say, I have what it takes to go into this future and create a bright future for myself and others? What are we trusting? So I think that there's also really much inner work to be done to be able to be capable, because without awareness, our mind can take us to heaven or hell.
Right.
And so if we are active co-creators, we have a choice. We don't when we are just taken by the mind. It can take us to hell in 5 minutes.
Right. So we, a typical masculine attitude, you see it with many consultants and leaders, is they polarize the situation. Right. And yes, polarization can give contrast so we can see things more clearly. That's true, but that's a very masculine approach. And what needs now is the water element that's in this Piscean process in 2024 before it goes into 2025 and in Aries is looking at how we need to forgive, how we need to dissolve the past, how we need to let go of our resentments and our wounds. You can hold on to wounds and resentments for incarnation after incarnation, or you can find peace, which is the ultimate goal of water signs, to find peace within themselves. And when you've found peace, then you can be at peace with the world around you. This is not a naive conception. This is how it is. But the water signs, which is where 2024 is so important, is a washing process. It's a purification process. To be washed, to get the past to be washed away, you release it. Right? And this is a fantastic process for all of us to let go of these thought forms that have persisted and that we've kept and maintained. Our identity is maintained by our choices. Well, then this is a choice. Where do we want to go? What do we want to let go of? Well, this is going to be a very, very important evolutionary step, releasing the past so that you can welcome the future. Right? 2025 onwards is so much about the future. There's so much fantastic possibilities. And we're, of course, as individuals and collectively as humanity, we're incredibly creative. And that's the point, that we're able to use our heart and head to create the world that we want. On other planets and other dimensions, that's exactly what they do. Our Venusian brothers and sisters, they shake their heads when they think, why do you need money? Why everything that they create, they create for the use of the mind, right? And we're going to work out what that means in much more detail in the years to come. I'll close that.
No, but that is bringing us back to the start where you were talking about fear. And then to be aware of how fear holds a grip on us. And one place where fear really gets us is in terms of money. Time, money, convenience, that's where the ego really gets us and holds pulls us back into the old world.
Right.
And so that's why I really like that you recommend people to have courage, the courage to learn, the courage to unlearn, and the courage to learn something new way of being in life. This is the invitation for 24 and beyond, is to let go and open up to what else is possible, because there's so many other opportunities, actually infinite opportunities, but we don't get to them as long as we hold on. And we all know that. We all recognize there are places in us. I mean, I work with that all the time. Release, look at, take responsibility, transform, do something else. And I see it in my leadership participants as well. Some of them I really see that washing, and they, after 9 months, they come out in a new version that's like it's almost unrecognizable for themselves.
Right.
Like, wow, is this who I really am? I was caught up in so many other thought forms that made me act in different ways. So
right. But this is the wonderful, the result. But people have to trust the process, and that's the key to work with so much of what you're doing and that. But people need to recognize and really give trust to this process. If you invest this energy, it is an investment, but there are results that take place. And don't be focused upon, when am I going to get there? The destination, takes care of itself. It's more to enjoy the journey that we need to learn, because, whether it takes a year, 2 years, it doesn't matter. I mean, I wrote a book about death from an astrological viewpoint. It took me 20 years to write that book. It doesn't matter whether it took 20. And another book I wrote in 6 months. So it doesn't matter. But what matters is that it comes forth, that it's manifested, right? So we have to, whatever we know, we have to act upon that. So action liberates. Right. So our actions really are the best way of gauging, our consciousness. As the Americans would say, walk the talk. But I would say, but action liberates. So let's see it, demonstrate it. Right? And that's where integration takes place, because otherwise it's theory. It has to be constantly theory and practice, theory and practice. You have to make it manifest. You have to act upon what you believe in. That's the principle of integration. Otherwise, it doesn't take place.
Definitely. We've been talking for a long time, and I want to end by something that I think is very important in the new era, and that is how we can help each other by mirroring each other and by supporting each other. And I'd like to start this new year by honoring you, Derek. I've known you for I think maybe 15 years or so, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And I've really seen you be completely and 100% dedicated to your mastery, and you've kept evolving it and expanded it and unfolded it in new ways, and helped so many different groups of people, from individuals to business people to leaders to everybody who wants to learn. So I just want to honor you for that, and I am really thrilled to see that the time is more and more ripe for what you are offering. So it's going to be exciting times for you as well.
Well, I'm a good mirror for you as well, because these are exciting times for you and what you're offering, and because you are exactly the right person at the right place in the right time. Right. So again, it as with a quote from Martin Luther King, what is it that we're really aiming for? And you're aiming for the advancement of light on planet Earth. And then you join me, and we join many, many, many others. And this is the point, that there are more and more people that are birthing this. And it's that bigger percentage of individuals that are joining this process that makes this birthing of the new age much, much more realistic.
Absolutely, yeah. And you also know, you have heard me speak about the feminine and work with it in a zillion ways. And it really touches my heart, Derek, to hear you speak about the importance of the divine feminine, because it is it is still a work in progress in the sense that so many places on Earth, the divine feminine is suppressed and in so many ways violated. But that's why I really agree with Dalai Lama when he says the world will, we really need the Western women to step up, because those are the ones who have the education, the freedom, the tools to be able to lift, for on behalf of the rest. So we get that balance between the masculine and feminine. And also, I think men are so important in this. That's why I invite male leaders to come on board and learn about their own inner feminine.
Right.
Befriend that, so they can also, naturally, as you do, support this balance, which is our birthright.
Absolutely.
So that's
as a final comment with that, the feminine is also our relationship to our physical body. And so the physical body that we have, and then there's the earth itself, which is the physical body of this planet. And there is a great awakening, not just only going to the gym and keep fit, but an appreciation of what we put in our body, and that's a way of respecting the feminine as well. And the way of disrespecting the feminine is, the constant raping of resources and not sharing, adequate sharing. So all of these are feminine values. So each person has to look at their relationship to food, what they put into their system, their relationship to good health. That is where a lot of people can start, right? Because it's often a blind spot.
Yeah.
Right? And then one can add all the other essential qualities of the feminine. But hooray for the feminine, because of the fact that each person is appreciated and diversity is celebrated. And I'm all for celebration of diversity. Absolutely. I mean, I'm an Englishman with I would call it my Egyptian inner teachers. I live in Scandinavia, and I go to America and I write books in Swedish. It's just a form, right? And when we enjoy, the forms that we are, and see beyond that, right? Go in, and so this is the real relationship between personality, and its primary relationship is with the soul. So this is where it all goes. We want more meaning in the life, and the soul wants a rich experience on the planet. So are we providing the soul with a rich experience? I hope so, but that's for each individual in their book of life to, what are the chapters you're writing? Are they interested reading? I think so, but it could be even more interesting in the next 2 years or so. So full speed ahead. We may need the seatbelts buckled tightly for the next couple of years, but it goes better in the right direction. So everybody listening to our talk today should be aware that you and I are very confident about where it goes, but we can be impatient that it should go quicker, faster. But that's,
we would just like to help more people as well, because it's the more who get on board and try and do this, the faster the positive evolution will go. So right. This is also the invitation, to I know you do courses, you do individual sessions, and you do group sessions, and so on, and I do courses, all kinds of trying to help and actually make these communities of support and of it goes so much faster in groups, so much.
Absolutely.
Faster. I mean, everything goes faster in a group.
That's the significance of Aquarius group. This is an age of groups, so there's more truth and energies that descend into a group than if we're doing one-to-one, like two people. So group work has a permanent form of transformation. So I totally agree, and this should be understood that if a person's not involved in some way with a group, then they need to get involved with a group, because this is the means by which much more evolution takes place.
Yeah, and faster and much more pleasurable.
Right, so, enjoyable to share an experience with companions along the way. Absolutely. So this is a good start to the new year.
There's a lot of,
the 2nd of January.
It is, and I'm very excited for it. Yeah, we're already into the new year and starting it. And I want to thank you so much for this precious time that you offered all of us. It's really wonderful to speak with you. And as you can all hear, Derek has a wealth of knowledge. So just look up Derek Seagrief. I can see you on LinkedIn, for example, that people can find you there.
Yeah, I'm easy to find.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, my dear. Thank you for your time. It was wonderful to speak with you, and happy, joyous New Year.
Yay, the same. A brave new year. We will enjoy it, Kirsten. All right.
We will.
Bye.
Bye.